right? They are not related at all. So firstly, lay is thumb. And the exact same thing, according to your usage, would become tilt. Lay, adigam betul deh. Lay, lay the urne. Oh, yes. Thank you for the correction. So, in English, it's L-E-I, but in Mizo, it's L-A-E. If we elaborate too much on that, you might be lost a bit. So in Mizo, it's L-A-E. So anyways, let's go back to the introduction. So, lay thumb. Again, the same exact word, I think, the pronunciation, right? Lay becomes tilt. Again. And lay. That becomes bridge. And lay. That becomes ground or earth. And the same exact pronunciation, lay, buy to purchase. So, even though we may talk about the diversity, the opposite could also be said in this regard. In the sense that for lack of a different word, we use the same word, but it just sounds different. So it's open to debate, you could say. So anyways, to continue the introductions further, I would first like to introduce our advisors. I would just call them one by one. Mr. Sanjoy Hazarika, please. So, Sanjoy Da, without him, I don't think this festival would have been possible. We met roughly around a year ago. I've known about him, I've never met him. So, I don't know if Mona is here yet? Has Mona Zote arrived? Okay. So, Mona Zote, she's a commissioner in the taxation department. She's posted in Champai, and with her very busy schedule, she's still able to advise us on many of the things that we need. And I don't know, she might have some family issues. I have no idea, but I was hoping she would be here. Mona was actually the one who introduced me to Sanjoy Da. And you could say without Mona also again, this festival wouldn't have happened. And third, Maggie, Margaret Sozama. I'm so sorry, but Mona is not our advisor. She's from the committee, but I have to talk about her anyways because I was talking about Sanjoy Da and how I was introduced. So Maggie, I don't think she needs any further introduction here. And without her help, again, we've been meeting on and off for around maybe 5-6 times for the past 6 months, I think. Thank you so much to Maggie for this. And again, we have to add our silo. When we first opened the book cafe, one fine evening, Usailo came to my cafe with his collection of photos and he presented me. And if you can look back at the Instagram post that we have, you still see his picture and my picture. I'm probably wearing a green t-shirt or something, and he came casually also. And he came and told us how much he appreciated us opening the cafe. And to this day, because of him, because me being me and him being him, our situation is quite different. So I don't think I would have approached him for any advice or anything, because they are too far ahead of us in that regard. So thank you so much, Bhagavata. And last we have Preeti Gill, who is not with us, as she has grandma duties. And just around a month ago, I think, she had a new grandkid. And because of that, she has, grandma duties. So she couldn't be here. And without her again, so we've been meeting on and off online, like Zoom meets and all. And the advice that she's given us are all very valuable. Thank you so much, Preeti, even though you're not here. So, and that's it about the advisors. And next we have the organizing committee. And I am the chairman. And to be honest, I'm just the chairman. Most of the things are being done by the organizing committee. First is Mona Zote. So I don't think I need to introduce her further. And anyway, she's not here yet. And Pratap Shetty. So Pratap, we'll be seeing him on and off here in the stage. So I wouldn't call him out here anyways. So he's a writer, and he's also, I've known him for quite some time through my brother. He's our eldest brother's colleague, and he's the deputy director in the INPR department. A big hand for him again. He's very busy before. All right. That's an Sangir out there. So, associate professor, assistant, sorry. I get mixed up a lot. I want to glorify her, maybe I'm overdoing it a bit, because she's my baby sister, by the way. Yes. And so, without her, I am just a bookseller. But now, because of her, I'm able to stand up here and introduce and do the introductions. Sila Ramruati, Tete, portable officer. Without Tete, I don't think most of the guests would have had a good time. From the airport up to here, logistics, everything's in our hands. Thank you so much, Tete. So, I think it's safe to say that this started with Mona, like I said before, because she introduced me to Sanjoida and so on and so forth, and here we are. So, I wouldn't take much time anymore, as we've, used up quite a lot. We were supposed to start at 9:45, and like Pratap said, the CM couldn't come, and it's so sad. We were expecting him, because the new CM, we have very high hopes in a new government and all these things. We were expecting him, but luckily we have a very distinguished keynote speaker, and I would like to call him up before I go down here, Mr. Dr. Mizoram. Please come up to the stage for the keynote.
Dr. Mizoram is the General Council member for the period 2023-2027 of Sahitya Academy, which is under the Ministry of Culture, and he is representing Sahitya Academy, which is who is one of our sponsors of this fest, and is also an associate professor in the Department of Mizoram University.
Mr. Chairman, the organizing committee of Mizoram Literature Festival, Mr. Ruataralte, His Excellency David Puig, anyway, His Excellency David, Ambassador of the Dominican Republic to India, Professor Joy from JNU, and Professor Ratno Nirakiente. He is a senior professor and Dean, School of Humanities and Languages, and apart from that, he is also a recipient of Padma Awardee. And distinguished writers, creative writers, eminent critics, poet, historian from Mizoram and outside Mizoram, and our most valued invited guest, ladies and gentlemen, dear students. It is indeed a great pleasure for me to be invited as a keynote speaker in the Mizoram Literature Festival. So I'm really happy for that. And then, as we all know, the festival chosen theme celebrate the power of words and creativity and showcase literary diversity from Mizoram and across India is an important one that we'll explore and expound during Mizoram Literature Festival. According to critics, a well-known critics, even for the literature student, Thomas D. Quincy said, there are two types of literature: the literature of knowledge and the literature of power. And according to him, the literature of knowledge is to give information or to teach the readers or the learners. And then at the same time, he also talks about the function of literature of power. According to him, the function of literature of power is to move the readers or inspire the readers. to do something or to write something. This is the function of literature of power, according to Thomas De Quincey. So this classification indicates there are two sorts of literature that provide us with knowledge and powers. So if we move a little further, the first talk of purely discursive understanding, and then the second may eventually appeal to higher understanding or reason, but always through feelings of pleasure and sympathy. So it is clear that every literature needs both of these works, literature of knowledge and literature of power. Having with the goals in mind, we need to publish or write as many books as possible. So literature has the power to change our life. Not only our life, but also the society, to open minds and to inspire empathy. This is very important. And then, yet for many years, the literature of the world has been criticized for its lack of diversity. Diversity is today one important chosen theme. The publishing industry has been criticized for favoring some authors over from those underrepresented communities. This is the hurdles, or this is the problems we are facing. This has led to a significant gap in the representation of diverse voices and the experience in literature. This might happen in any literature and languages that are not in the scheduled language. Scheduled language, I mean scheduled language in the Indian Constitution or official language may suffer more. However, in recent years, there has been a growing movement in the literary world to promote diversity in literature. Diversity is very important theme of this Mizo Literature Festival. In this respect, the contribution made by Sahitya Academy is remarkable. Sahitya Academy, under Ministry of Culture, organized a number of literary programs throughout India to promote diversity in Indian literature. And then, according to my observation, it is a high time that authors, readers, and publishers have all joined in the effort to bring more diverse voices and stories to the forefront of literature. And then this movement I call it, has brought much needed attention to the importance of diversity in literature and the impact it can have on the readers. The question may arise in our mind regarding the diversity and representation. Why is diversity in literature is important? Diversity in literature is more than, as I have said, just racial diversity, and it also encompasses wide range of identities including gender, sexual orientation, disability, religion, and socio-economic background. When the authors from different backgrounds and experience are given the opportunity to tell their story, and the readers are exposed to have a new perspective and better able to understand and empathize with the people from different walks of life. And this can lead to a greater awareness, understanding, and acceptance of diverse cultures and experiences. Today, as we all know, we come from different backgrounds, culture, and experiences. Therefore, it is essential for literature to reflect that diversity. So, diversity is very, very important. As I have said, the chosen themes of today's literary festival. And then today's world, there has been a push for diversity in literature. So, as I have said, even Sahitya Academy is also promoting diversity in literature, and then with more voices and stories from marginalized communities being published. So, this has been vital in helping readers from all backgrounds feel seen and heard in literature. So, literature is an important instrument for reflection of society's problems and sufferings. Such being the case, diversity is very, very important. One of the main reasons why diversity in literature is important is that it promotes, as I have said, empathy and understanding. By reading stories, it might be a fiction, or it might be a short stories, or novel, or other writings. From different perspectives, readers can develop a better understanding of different culture, belief, and customs, and experiences. These can lead to increased empathy and help help combat ignorance. And then furthermore, representation. Representation in literature is essential for marginalized community and to see themselves reflected in the stories they read. These can have a profound impact, deep impact on their self-esteem and a sense of belongings. And then, for instance, let me cite one example. A child who grows up reading books with diverse culture will be able to see themselves in literature, leading to a greater sense of self-worth and a pride in their culture or identity. So this is very important. Diversity. Without it, it is impossible to get such kind of belongings. And then another reason why diversity in literature is essential, it is also very important that it encourages our creativity. Today, some writers are creative writers and other media critics or whatever. So diversity encourage our creativity. Creativity is very important. Not only that, it also encourages our innovations. So by incorporating diverse perspectives and experiences, writer can create unique and compelling stories. Inspiration is very important, not only for the writers, but for the readers. Inspiration, or as Plato says, although Plato condemned poets are a liar in his famous book, The Republic. But Plato's student, Aristotle strongly promote this creativity or emotion or imitation. So that is why diversity in literature is very, very important. And then another important thing I'd like to highlight is that diversity in literature is essential for a social progress. Not only for the readers or for the writers or for the communities, it is also very, very important for a social progress. As Thomas De Quincey has said, literature has a power to shape our understanding. He said, literature of knowledge gave us some information, some knowledge. And then at the same time, literature of power shape or understanding our society, even our society, and at the same time, it also promotes diversity. And then diversity and voices of the stories, and we can help create more equitable and just society. This is very important things. And at the same time, student of literature may know his name, W. H. Hudson, William Henry Hudson. William Henry Hudson, in his book, An Introduction to the Study of Literature, he said, literature is a mirror of the society. Literature is a mirror of the society. This is a very important theory. For instance, Henry Fielding in his novel Tom Jones also portrayed or reflect the complete picture of English society of his time. And William Shakespeare plays also mirror out his society and the Romantic period. And at the same time, we know Matthew Arnold and Tennyson were also depicted the whole scenario of the Victorian society. And then similarly, in Mizo literature, we have L.B. Liana. L.B. Liana is the first Mizo fiction writers. L.B. Liana, Ka Playa, Lal Zui Thara, Zik Kuipa, and so on. And other Mizo writers vividly reflect the Mizo society. Mizo society. This is very, very important. So diversity in literature not only reflect the world we live in, but it also provides representation and opportunity for underrepresented groups. So in order to fully understand why diversity in literature is so important or is so crucial, it is important to consider the impact that literature has on the society as a whole. Now, Hudson, as I have said, Hudson defined literature as an expression of life through the medium of language. So in his book, An Introduction to the Study of Literature, he said, it is an expression of life. Literature is an expression of life through the medium of language. Matthew Arnold also said, literature is a criticism of life. It is also an expression of life. Through literature, a writer expresses human life. This is very, very important. So, the expression can be seen in the form of poetry, drama, a novel, short story, essays, and so on. And it represents one specific society. One writer can represent his contemporary society or one particular society. At the same time, as our chairman or the coordinator of this Mizo Literature Festival has said, language is one of the important tools or a medium of expression, ideas and thought, both in oral and written form. So, different societies have used and are still using different languages for the fulfillment of individual and societies and their aspirations. So representation in literature is crucial, especially for marginalized groups who have historically been excluded or misrepresented in literature. When individuals see themselves, as I have said, represented in literature, it can have a profound impact on their self-esteem and a sense of belongings. So, additionally, this representation in literature can also lead to a greater social and political awareness and change. Change can happen through literature. So literature or representation is very, very important in today's world. Voice is here, but if that voices or understanding is not transformed, not put in the form of writings, it might be a novel, it might be a fiction or essays or other writings, change cannot happen. So only through literature, only through writings, we can have a change. We can promote the society. We can make the society better and more meaningful. Now, another important thing, yes, it is also important thing is that now one important thing I like to say is that diversity in literature provides opportunities for the authors from diverse background to have their voices and their story told. It is an important to support and promote diverse authors. Diverse author today, we come from a different corner, different areas. And then promote diverse author as their perspective and experiences are just as valid and important as those of more established and mainstream authors. So it is also worth mentioning that diversity in literature is not just limited to the race and ethnicity. It also, as I have said, encompasses gender, sexual orientation, ability, and socioeconomic status, among other factors. So when we prioritize diversity in literature, we open up opportunity for the individuals from all backgrounds to see themselves and their experience represented in the story we tell. Now, to conclude my speech, diversity in literature is essential for promoting empathy, understanding, and community. So, by providing representation for historically marginalized voices and perspective, literature can help combat stereotype and broaden our horizons and foster creativity and innovations. So it is also essential that we can continue to push for more diverse representation in literature, both in terms of stories told and other authors telling them. By prioritizing diversity in literature, we can create more inclusive and equitable society where everyone's voices is heard and understand and value. With this few words, I inaugurate Mizoram Literature Festival 2024. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Zonet. I will request you to remain standing on the stage for some time. We would like to give you a small token of our appreciation. And to hand over our token of appreciation, I would like to invite Sanjay Hazarika, Sanjay Da, to kindly felicitate our keynote address, the one who gave, Dr. Zoram Dinthara, our keynote speaker here. And as he is doing the honors, I'd like to mention that the Mizoram Lit Fest was made possible through the collaboration of Book Cafe, Center for Northeast Studies, Maja House, and we have Zonet as our official media partner. And we are thankful to Sahitya Academy and all our, as I said, Maja House, Center for Northeast Studies, and also our different sponsors here today. Maybe I'm forgetting some of them. We didn't have quite a lot of them, as I said. We barely managed it, to be honest. So before I call on our next guest, who's come all the way from Delhi, I'd like to give a short introduction of our next speaker, then I'll invite him. We have with us today His Excellency David Puig, the Ambassador, Embassy of the Dominican Republic in the Republic of India. He's not just a diplomat, but a scholar par excellence. He's been an ambassador here since February 2021. He joined the Dominican Foreign Service in 2004 and has been posted in France, India, Egypt, and Belgium. To his command of English, Spanish, and French, he has added through his time in India and the Middle East conversational skills in Hindi, remarkable, I'd say, and Egyptian Arabic. Beyond his work for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Dominican Republic, he has been active in the cultural and literary scene in the country. In 2010, he launched, I hope I get this name right, Ediciones de Acapulco, a publishing house focused on literature and art books from the Caribbean region. He published in 2015 Sidewalks Salon, 1001 Street Chairs of Cairo. He has translated into Spanish works of Jean-Noël Pancrazi, Eric Wautier, Maged Zahar, Khaled Matawa, and A.K. Ramanujam. His translation of Arun Kolatar Kala Ghoda poems was published in 2020 by Krula in Barcelona. Ladies and gentlemen, let us invite His Excellency David Puig to address us all here.
Thank you very much, and good morning to everyone. I think I will prefer to sit, not because I'm going to get tired and be very long. I'll just take 5-6 minutes, but because I couldn't print my speech, it will be more comfortable to me if I just read it sitting. So I'll try to set this. General Council member of the Saite Academy, Dr. Zoram Nintara. Chairman of the Lay Festival Organizing Committee, Van Laluata Ralte. Other members of the committee, writers, poets, friends. I am very honored to be part of this first edition of the Lay Mizoram Literary Festival, an important new initiative which aims to highlight the literature of a region with little exposure beyond its borders and to create dialogues with other literatures from the Northeast, from India, and beyond. This is my first ever trip to Mizoram, and I am very happy it is happening on the occasion of this festival. The title of the text I will now read is When Two Archipelagos Meet. When I started thinking about the few minutes I will share with you in this inaugural session, I first thought of speaking of me as an author, of telling you who I am, what my interests are, the books I have published, translated, or edited. And in doing so, I will have been talking as a writer to other fellow writers. Then I thought the other option available to me will be to talk as a diplomat. And by that I mean to stand or sit here in front of you as the representative of my country, the Dominican Republic. From that point of view, my individuality will have taken the back seat, and I will have been compelled to tell you about our great writers and poets. I will have chosen my favorite ones and tried to articulate something captivating about them. But it seemed to me not only an impossible task in a couple of minutes, but also a complicated one in front of an audience to whom the literature from my part of the world is almost completely unknown. So I opted for a third possibility, which is to zoom out from myself, to zoom out from my country, and to address you from the perspective of the archipelago of the Caribbean, where the Dominican Republic belongs. This archipelago, also known as the West Indies, comprises around 700 islands and islets, surrounded by one of the most spectacular seas of the world. Seen from above, it is a string of pieces of lands and dots of different sizes, scattered across a body of water, framed by the continental shelves of North, Central, and South America. As I reflected on my archipelago, the idea struck me that one could think of the northeast of India as another archipelago. One where thousands of settlements are spread across the mountains, the hills, the plateaus, the forests and rivers of the 7 states of this region, nestled between Burma, China, Bangladesh, and the rest of India. Landing in Mizoram yesterday, seeing from the plain and later from the roll to Aizawl, the rock geography covered by dense tropical-looking forest with familiar trees, my anxieties about comparing our archipelagos vanished. a blue archipelago on my part of the world, a green one on this side. A poetic image, but also, I believe, an analogy that makes sense if we look into the history, into the human and natural geography of both our regions. The archipelago of the Caribbean has been defined by the Dominican writer Juan Bosch as an imperial border, an idea that resonates with the geopolitical position that the northeastern regions have occupied. From the 15th to the 19th century, the Caribbean was a contested space in which the rivalries between Spanish, French, British and Dutch colonial powers played out, helped by pirates and adventurers. Before, indigenous people of many different groups had settled over the centuries in the islands, migrating by small boats carved out of trees from the continental mainland. In similar ways, the Caribbean and the northeast of India have historically been liminal spaces, areas located at the edge of wider and more powerful political entities. Our respective special in-betweenness has implied successive waves of settlements and migrations. As a result, both our regions are home to rich, layered, and diverse identities. In the case of the Caribbean, this melting pot includes the indigenous population, the European colonizer, African slaves, Chinese and Indian laborers who were brought to work in the sugarcane plantations. Christianity, which came to the Caribbean with the sword of the Spanish conquerors, became the main religion. Its assimilation by people with different cultural traditions have given birth to syncretic cults. Another point of convergence between our archipelagos is the contrast between the perception of a region as historical, geographical, and cultural entities, despite the fact of their diversity and fragmentation. One aspect of this fragmentation is the poor connectivity inside our respective regions. In the Caribbean, it is easier today to travel from any island, to fly from any island to Miami or New York in the United States than to flight or sail between islands. If you replace Miami or New York with Delhi or Calcutta and sail by drive, you're talking about the same situation in the Northeast. So, if we agree with the analogy I am proposing, if we imagine that I am speaking as an archipelago and that you are listening as part of another archipelago, then I can formulate the following question. Coming from the Caribbean, what can I share with another archipelago? With little time left, I will go straight to the answer and directly to the ideas shaped by thinkers from the Caribbean that I believe can resonate, can spark conversation, and can be useful to think from the Northeast. Despite the fragmentation, or maybe because of it and the intention of overcoming it, writers and scholars from the Caribbean archipelago have been, since the early years of the 20th century, approaching intellectually the Caribbean space as a unity, trying to propose conceptual frameworks that can capture what bounds the region together. In that regard, I would like to mention the work developed since the 1970s by writers like Édouard Glissant, Patrick Chamoiseau, and Raphaël Confiant, all hailing from the French-speaking island of Martinique. With words such as Caribbeanness and Creoleness, they have invited us to think about identities in the Caribbean as being multiple, heterogeneous, the result of relations rather than monolithic entities. Each country, each island will claim its distinctive and unique national identity, but what Glissant, Chamoiseau, and Confiant invites us to consider is that what is unique in the Caribbean is that all identities are blended, have integrated in different ways the ingredients that coexist in the region. Identities should not be defined by their opposition, but by the fact that they are all made in the same way through relations. Our history is a braid of histories, writes Chamoiseau in praise of Creoleness. Roots kill everything around them, writes Glissant, adding that we need to replace the idea of unique roots by the idea of identity as relation or rhizome. For Glissant, as for Chamoiseau, this notion of identity is not an abstract construction. It is based in the lived experience and reality of the Caribbean. Because of their nature, because of their history, the Caribbean and all archipelagos, they say, are more open to diversity, to hospitality, to accepting transformation, to complexity, and to ambiguity also. At a time of increased interaction between people and cultures that we call globalization, archipelagos propose a model for coexistence. The continental areas might be resisting that idea, but the fact is, writes Glissant, that the entire world is becoming an archipelago and creolizing. It is, of course, an optimist perspective, but one that we need to keep reminding ourselves in these troubled times. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. And I request you to remain seated for a short while. We'd like to felicitate you with a small memento. And to do the honors, I request one of our advisors, Puelar Silo, to kindly felicitate our speaker, the Ambassador. And I am so thankful for your speech. I think every one of us here is, because you drew a parallel very wonderfully between your region, the Caribbean, and our region, the northeast of India, with so much of similar strands, whether it is history, culture, the diversity. And I think we look forward to a very meaningful collaboration through you with the entire Caribbean region. And maybe that's too ambitious, but I hope in the coming years we would definitely make it happen. Thank you very much, sir. Before I call on Professor Joyal Pachwau, who will be delivering her inaugural lecture, Being Mizo, I'd like to shortly introduce her. I mean, Professor Joy needs no introduction, but I must talk about her, and I feel privileged to talk about her because I have read her works a couple of years ago, and I use her translation of the Mizo, of one of the memoirs of the Labour Corps, which I will not talk about now. She knows about it. So Professor Joyal Pachwau is one of our foremost Mizo academics, and she is a professor of history at the Center for Historical Studies, Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. She has a doctorate in history from the same university, as well as a doctorate in social and cultural anthropology from the University of Oxford. She's also a Fulbright Fellow, if I'm not mistaken. And her research interests span huge areas, ranging from gender in society in medieval India to history of the Portuguese expansion in Asia. And more recently, she's been working on the history of Northeast with a focus on identity and formations. And I think this has resulted in a couple of her books, which are her recent books, Being Mizo, Identity and Belonging in Northeast India, The Camera as a Witness, A Social History of Mizoram, and Christianity in Indian History, Issues of Culture, Power and Knowledge, and a few other books. She has also been awarded Sneh Mahajan Prize for the Best Book 2012-2014 in Modern Indian History by the Indian History Congress. Ladies and gentlemen, let us invite Professor Joyal Pachwau.
Okay. Respected dignitaries, respected senior colleagues, friends, students, it's indeed a great honor for me to be giving this inaugural lecture at the first Mizoram Literature Festival. I'm also very grateful to the organizing committee for inviting me here. And it's really wonderful to once again interact with people from various backgrounds to be able to discuss the literature of Northeast India. I'm just wondering if this can be lowered a bit. Huh? Okay, yeah, that's better. Thank you. So I was asked by the organizing committee to speak on my book, Being Mizo, which was published in 2014. And this was a work, part of a work that I did for Oxford University, my DPhil thesis. And so, and it was published by Oxford University Press. And being a person, I think I shall be a bit biographical, autobiographical. I was not born in Mizoram, and I grew up in Pune, and I did most of my studies outside. And so, in a way, as a person who lived outside, I was always interested in knowing more about the land of my parents and the land of my origins. And so that began my sort of journey about learning more about the Mizos and Mizoram. And there were sort of many issues that I had in mind when I started this work. And broadly, it stemmed from what we may call the historiography of the region. That is, what is the nature of the kind of works about Mizo identity that we read. And I must, especially for those who are not from the Mizo background, I must stress that, Mizo, in the Mizo language, we have a large amount of literature that caters to the Mizo population. And in some ways, that is very fortunate, because right from the time writing was given to us, a lot of things were written down. And I always tell students who work on Mizo history to, for instance, refer to Mizo Levai Chanchinbu that started getting printed, that was printed from 1903. And many people from the Northeast do not have that kind of source material readily available. So not only that, but we have people like our senior colleague here, Putluangtea's grandfather, Reverend Liang Khaya, and many others writing from a very early period about the history and culture of the Mizos. Unfortunately, that has not been translated, and so many people do not know about our culture and our society. So, so that was something that I began with, and of course then we have the works of several British colonial officials who wrote a little bit about the Lushai Hills then. At another level, the Mizos have not got the exposure as some of the other tribes of the Northeast, especially in terms of colonial ethnography. So we know, for instance, that the Nagas are spoken about a lot. Verrier Elbin worked amongst some of the tribes of Arunachal, and so they got a lot of exposure. But in Mizoram, among the Mizos, we do not have as much literature that is sort of forthcoming, in English. So all of those contributed to me thinking more about our Mizo history. And unfortunately, some of these works that came out, especially in Mizo, that have come out in the years, are also, in some senses, not historical, the way an academic would define what historical is in terms of the validity of sources and things like that. So how does one write a work on the history of the Mizos that is something that the people of Mizoram themselves would recognize, and yet at the same time would also be considered legitimate as far as academic history writing is concerned? That was my sort of the concern that I had. So as people would say, I don't want to use too much of academic language, but etic and emic categories of ascription, as academics would say. The view from the outside and the view from within, how do those two things sort of come together? people can view us from outside in a different way, whereas we Mizos may consider our own sort of backgrounds in a particular way. And how do we sort of combine those two viewpoints in order to bring out a work that is sort of academically acceptable. That was sort of the issue that I had in mind when I began this work. So being Mizo was in some ways a means to answer those questions. And in my work, especially as far as methodology is concerned, I use archival work, and I also use ethnographic work, anthropological works, in order to be able to understand this identity, issues of identity. Now, who is a Mizo? For some time, I think this was a sort of taken for granted answer. We all sort of knew who a Mizo was, right? Maybe these days, there are certain sort of questions that are challenges, or shall I put it as challenges, to this identity of who a Mizo is. But for some time, I think there was a stability in this understanding of who a Mizo was, I don't know whether some of our colleagues here would agree with me or not, but nowadays there is like, who is a Mizo? Or are we actually Zo? Or are we Zoni? Or are we Kuki Chin Mizo? Or what is it? There are some kind of challenges that are coming to this identity at the moment. But when I wrote it, that was not the case. So I'm going to talk about that period when I was writing the book. Okay? So what I found out when I was doing research at that point of time was that there is what we may call a discourse that is at the level of politics of who a Mizo is or who a Mizo was. So this is what we may call an official discourse that may be led by political parties, that may be led by the YMA, that may be led by the MZP. So that there's a discourse at that level that is happening of who a Mizo is or who a Mizo was. But there was also an understanding at an everyday level of who a Mizo is. Some people would call it habitus, right? At an intrinsic level, you identified immediately who a Mizo is, who a real Mizo is, okay? So that is something that I was trying to sort of navigate and negotiate around. So in my book, therefore, in order to be able to answer these sort of issues that we had, I addressed the issue in 4 or 5 different ways. In the first instance, I looked at how outsiders looked at the Mizos. Outsiders looked at the Mizos. Of course, one of the things is that if you go to Delhi, nobody will be able to differentiate between a Mizo, a Naga, a Khasi, Arunachali. No. So in a way, people look at the Northeast as one sort of homogeneous category, right? So I traced all of that through, say, films, for instance, and through social media, through interviews with people in localities which had a large Northeast resident population. And then, of course, there is also how people of the Northeast are understood through academic discourse. So that is another level through which I engage with those ideas. And finally, how does the state define the region? So when I thought about the outsiders and how they looked at Mizos, I looked at it through these 3 sort of different kinds of frames: the academic discourse, the state discourse, and the popular sort of discourse. And in many ways, they did not always coalesce together, those 3 kinds of public opinions, or 3 kinds of sort of frames did not always do that. And then the second thing that I went on to talk about was the idea of the construction of Mizo identity, okay? So in that I spoke largely about the historical trajectory along which the Mizo sort of identity evolved. Now, most of us in Mizoram and most of the writings in Mizo like to think of the Mizo identity as a primordial identity, as something that existed in the past, in the way that we understand it today, and it did not sort of evolve or change. But one of the things that I sort of focus a lot on is this construction of the identity from the time of the arrival of the British until, say, for instance, the 1980s when the Troubles or the Rum Boy broke out. Okay, so I looked at that historically, and one of the things that we find that the British were very, very, and this happens everywhere, wherever colonialism sort of landed, and that is what we may call the territorialization of identity. You know, linking a people to a particular territory. We know, for instance, that Mizos would, because of Jhum cultivation, because of wars, would move their villages, would move their Jhums from place to place, right? And so our identity at that point of time was not so much associated with the land. It evolved around a village chief, for instance. People were known by the name of their, the name of the chief, the chief's village that they came from. They were identified in those ways. But the territory was not considered so important. But British cartographic sort of measures and you know, all those kinds of imperial tools of domination and administration ensured that we were somehow sort of tied to a territory that we came to know as the Lushai Hills, and then that we now know as Mizoram today. So this evolution of how we understand ourselves as a people is something that in some ways is attached to the colonial presence in the Lushai Hills. So I do that in the work, but then of course in the post-colonial context, the various kind of movements that occurred, and all of that contributing historically through the use of written sources, archival sources, I go on to trace that. And then of course the third important aspect that I deal with in the book is with regard to religion. Christianity by the 50s and 60s came to be adopted by the majority of the population of Mizoram. And it is not just a religion that people have adopted, but the religion is the means through which culture is expressed. Let's put it that way. The religion is the means through which culture is expressed, okay? So it has become a very, very intrinsic part of our Mizo identity. And I have met a few, I mean, sort of, I won't even say a few, I've met one person who claimed he was a Hindu, you know, and a Mizo who was a Hindu. There are a few, if I'm not mistaken, I haven't met them personally, atheists who are Mizos. But largely, Mizos will claim to be are Christian, and even if you're not a sort of a practicing Christian, you are a cultural Christian, you know? You participate in the, you know, Christmas feast or whatever you do it, you're in that sense, you are a cultural Christian. Okay, so, some others have written about it and have spoken about what they call vernacular Christianity, okay? So in Mizoram, we have also been able to vernacularize our Christianity. We don't see it as something that is coming from outside, but we think of it as something that has organically sort of developed within our society. And we have, I think, quite successfully transformed earlier practices into Christian practices as well. Okay, so I focus a lot about this development of what we may call a vernacular Christianity. In fact, we often say Mizo-Christian or Christian Mizos in our daily conversations as well. So, so that is the third thing that I talk about in my book. I'll finish within another 5 minutes or so. And the last and what I consider a very important aspect of the book is that is that of a locality identity, okay, or of a Veng identity. You know, in Mizo, we always say, Khoi Veng e ni. And if you try, and then we understand it as, which Veng are you from, right? If you translate it into English, we'll say, which Veng are you from? But if you literally translate it, it is, which Veng are you? Khoi Veng e ni. Mo. No, in Aizawl, okay, I'm talking about Aizawl. My research, the thing was basically from Ramlun North. So, but in Aizawl, we identify ourselves with a particular locality. And of course, if you go outside Aizawl, you identify yourself with a village. And if the village is slightly bigger, even within the village, there'll be little veins. So you identify yourself within those veins, okay? So in a way, this territorialization of identity that I spoke about earlier is something that extends to the Veng and the locality. And I say this because, like, for instance, when people die in Delhi or anywhere else in the country, you will not, very rarely do you bury the body in Delhi. Very rarely. You have to transport the body to the locality where a person was born. If somebody dies in Aizawl, they take them back to the village where he was from, if he was not. So in some senses, it is the Veng that is giving you your identity. It is the Veng that is giving you your identity, and you have to sort of be buried in that particular Veng. Okay? So how does that imply, what does it mean for our identity, for the idea of identity? And one of the main arguments in my book is that it does not really depend upon whether you are Mizo or not, you know, traditionally Mizo or not. Anybody who is accepted in the Veng is buried in the Veng locality, is buried in the Veng Klanwal or locality cemetery or graveyard. And all those are actually considered, all of them are actually considered Mizo. So for that, I give examples of, say, a brew man who traditionally we would consider as not Mizo. You know, traditionally we would not consider as Mizo. He has lived in a Veng for several years. He has married a Mizo. And then when he dies, he is buried in the Veng Klanwal, right, in the locality graveyard. And so at the end of the day, it is not these large discourses that sort of play out in the making of the identity. It is actually everyday experiences and everyday negotiations that actually create the Mizo identity and a person is accepted as Mizo when he can be buried in the Veng Klanwal. Okay, so that is basically how I sort of work out this identity in my book. I don't think it is very advisable to think of identity as, okay, and which is what we always do. This tribe, this tribe, this tribe, this tribe is Mizo, you know, and those tribes are not Mizo. I don't think it really works out that way, because I think identity works out in the daily negotiations that we have. And people, I remember, actually the issue in Mizoram is we all know each other. So when I give an example, then automatically somebody knows that person. I can say all this very freely when I'm back in Delhi, but out here I have to be a little bit careful. But we know, I think all of us know people whom we would not consider Mizo, but who have lived in the locality for several years and have attended all the death rituals of others and all of that, who over time become sort of incorporated within the Mizo identity and are given what we may call a Mizo burial. So in the end, I look at death and the significance of that as a marker of of a Mizo identity. Okay, so those are basically the broad contours of my book when I talk about identity issues. As was mentioned, I have a book with Willem van Skendel called The Camera as Witness, where I look at 100 years of photographs photography among the Mizos. Okay, photographs of Mizos, and this is one thing, you know, when I was growing up, I said, like for instance, if you go to the Mizo museum, I don't know whether it's still the case, but when I went, I saw a mannequin of a person in Poinsett, and they said 12th century. Okay, now this is a bit, I mean, as a historian, it is something that is totally incorrect, okay? So, but we hardly had pictures of people from an earlier period. So I went on this mission of digging out a lot of old pictures. In fact, I have, which didn't come out in our book, about the Darzo Lalnu with Captain Shakespeare and all of that. We had all of those pictures, and to see this sort of development of Mizos through 100 years through this book. That's another book that I wrote with Willem. And of course, nowadays I'm moving on to other things such as human-animal histories, how humans and animals have sort of combined together, not combined, sorry, are so entangled in the creation of any kind of Mizo society or any society in the Northeast. So the book looks at these human-animal entanglements in Northeast India. So those are some of my sort of interests. I also like to look at how plants and animals are plants and humans are so sort of intertwined. The lives are so intertwined. You know, one of these prime examples is the coronavirus, of course. We know that one virus made our lives, almost come to a standstill for almost 2 years. So you find that our histories are actually affected so much by the plants and the animals around us. And so these entanglements are something that I would like to sort of develop more and work on more in the days to come. So with that, I think I've taken more time than I should, but thank you very much for your patient listening. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Joy. I'd request you to just be there on the stage for a short while. And I would request Professor Margaret Zama to kindly felicitate Professor Joy. And thank you so much for your speech. It was an eye-opener because as a person being interested in identity, for me, I think I could resonate with some parts of your speech. So I think very succinctly you put in your words what shapes and negotiates the Mizo identity. Thank you very much.
As you know, there's been a slight shift in the program and also in the timing, but this is what happens all the time, so it's nothing major. And what I want to say about this session is, even for me, I'm looking forward to it. At the same time, I have to let you all know, for the non-speakers of Mizo, that it's going to be a mixture. It'll be a bilingual, there'll be a lot of, and especially from the blue archipelago, you'll understand. Well, here we are in the green archipelago, and so I just wanted to make that clear in the beginning about the language. Now, how we'll structure this session, very briefly, I don't want to take up time for myself. They'll have their self-introduction, and I could also enhance it if I feel they have left out something important. Here, I have their little bit. We shouldn't waste too much time on that, but we must know who are the people sitting here. After that, we'll start the session. And it's a conversation. Therefore, they are all holding their mics also because of that. You know, it's going to be structured in a sense. So please relax and feel laid back, and I'll request, especially the young people with us, you know, to listen carefully so that you can make your questions. I will try to open about 10 minutes later, as much as we can. I'll sum up at the end in English, but even in the beginning and in between, it will go on, because we all understand English here. But I think when they respond, they would like to speak more Mizo. That's the only thing that I wanted to mention here. Now, and also, for us, apart from being truly happy to see, you know, faces from all over, I should say. It's surprising that you all have come, and we are really grateful. But other than that, I have seen old friends, familiar faces from Northeast Writers Forum, people like Mamang Dai, Dhruva Hazarika, really well-known writers, if I may say so, at the national, even international level. Here, we are having 3 writers who I would say are very important, but of course I must also say that it is not only them, but definitely these are the key people whom students also would like to interact with. Why? Because they are studying their works at the college level and also at the postgraduate level. So, and also maybe in class 12. I'm not too sure about that. So that is my brief initial comments. Now, you know me, so I'm a retired professor. There's not much to say after that. We have come here because I feel this is a very, very important occasion. And I hope it can be, it will grow and be even more successful in the years to come. We need not be there all the time, but new talents, new people, new faces must come up. And I must congratulate Marwat and the organizing committee, because especially Puelar, Silo and me, we are silent spectators. We don't say anything, or we don't even go for their meetings. So we congratulate them. I feel I should say that much as a member of the organizing committee. And of course, Poo Sanjoy Hazarika, he has earned the title Poo from us. And I think this is how now we will address him, because he's very much part and parcel of Mizoram. In, you know, he has, and he has contributed his time and energy, mind you. I don't think he is getting rich because he comes to Mizoram. But I do know that he has many good friends, and that's what he loves. He is in Shillong, but we never get invited to his house. Okay, so that's me. People have asked me to continue to write since I'm a storyteller, you know. You can't stop me once I start talking, so I'll have to be careful today also. I've been a teacher for 40 odd years, and I retired in 2020, year of the COVID. So it was a very lonely retirement for me. None of my students were there to wish me goodbye, farewell. None of my colleagues. It was that quiet and that lonely. And it still impacts me today. But of course, later on, after a year passed by and things, the lockdown came, you know, became loose. Then we had all the things that we should have had before. So having said that, I'll introduce Pu Van Aitlonga here sitting here in the middle. Pu Van, apart from what I am saying, you could add whatever you wish. He's very well known here. That is, he's doing really good business, not only in the media, but also in print culture here. He's one of the big people, I would say, big in every way, who has been able to come up with Mizo writing. And when I say Mizo writing, I don't mean just fiction writing. What I mean is writing in every way. He is very, very particular about language use and very particular about our society. In fact, I think I called him a social critic long ago. He may not have been very happy with that, but I think he's okay with it now. And he has a monthly magazine also, Lengzam, which is, you know, really popular. It's a little monthly magazine. And in this way, you know, he's able to disseminate many, many good ideas, thoughts, and sometimes he scolds his readers also, but I don't think they mind. And he has written a number of books. I have a number of his books on my shelf. Some of them are potpourri type, you know, mixture of essays, this, that, and the other. But I thought he would stick to fiction, which he didn't, because he became more and more involved with other things. He grew, you know. So, but I have worked so closely with him through the years because I used to translate his works and I encouraged others to translate. We have done research on him and it goes on and on, you know. His works are prescribed here and there. We are really proud of him. And other than all of this, he has come up with little gems, you know, short stories, little masterpieces. And these are also published, translated, published for you all to read. You will get them under Khatna and also in Sahitya Academy, Earth Songs. He resides here in Aizawl. We had a get-together the other day, just the three of us. It was a nice time at his house. And Taitea, the one who's sitting here beside me, we call him Taitea. It is just, you know, fond way of calling him. He's a prolific author. He has written some really good quality fiction works. Puvanei Tluanga, by the way, you may call him Tluanga. He has written fiction, but he is also a writer, like I said, essays, non-fiction. But here, Silal Nunsanga, he more or less confines himself to fiction. But that also sometimes may be fantasy, like Romrai Turuk, where he got award for the Mizo Academy of Letters in 2015. He actually got this award twice because he got his first award, Book of the Year, in 2006 for Pasal Tra. That was about, you know, it's about our Pasal Tra, our warriors. Warriors both at home, warriors in the forest, warriors who go out to hunt. And he also won the Zompendian Young Novelist Award and so on. And he is still continues to write. That is one thing. I think we'll keep that in mind. And I may say one thing, maybe later on he might want to comment on that also. That is Pasal Tra, you know, are brave warriors, braves. He harks back to those historical times and characters of those times, fictionalizes them. And today you won't believe it, everywhere you go, this has caught on as a trend that it has kind of become, everybody just listens to it. Even my maids at home, they're sweeping, cleaning the floor, they'll have their earphone and they'll listen to the storytelling in their phones. not written by him, but what I'm trying to say is, it has generated profuse uh, other stories, narratives, and sometimes with quality at stake, I should say, also. But this is not to blame Taitea. I'm just saying that he was the one who really popularized. And he's a nationalist at heart. He cannot hide it, so we know it. Now, Pudar Raukima, who's sitting there, we may call him Dara for short. He actually lives a few kilometers away outside Aizawl in the periphery, Sialsu. You know, his first work was in a way quite similar to Huckleberry Finn and Tom Sawyer types, where he harks back to his roots as a young boy with his friends. It's light reading, but it is such fun. And I think it is still on sale. It can still be bought. So especially our young people, you all should buy them and read them, these kind of works. And he is also a prolific writer, and he has also written another work. The title of that work is Thi Sakpo Kangam Adikem, or Thi Sakpo Kangam. You know, can you imagine having a title like that? It simply means I dare you to die. But it had so many things in it. You laugh, sometimes you get a little emotional. It's a really, really good book, good reading. So with that, just a few minutes to each of them if they want to add some things, and then we'll start our conversation. All right? Is that all right? Oh. Have I left out some things you want to add? Okay. And Putluang, what about you?
I used to translate these days. So I am trying to translate my name, Van Nei Kluanga. In Mizo, literally, it means if we put Van and Nei, in between, if we put space, Van is heaven, Nei is own. I am owning the heaven. All right. But if we do not put that space in between, Van Nei is a kind of fortunate.
Yeah, fortunate.
So I'm fortunate, it seems, if we do not give space in between. And if we have space, I own the heaven. And then Kluang at the end of my name, there is no surname at all. The whole name means something. If it is Kluang, if Kluang is smooth, going on and on, or
smoothly, you know, with no impediments on your way, you're going through life. Kluang Takin.
Kluang Takin. So it means that my name is my fortune will go on and on, it seems. That is who I am.
Good fortunes.
Thank you.
And Daro.
อ๋อ
So you do it.
ก็เลยขบุพิงค่ะที่สักโปะกังงำนี่เราวินที่สักโปะกังง
Okay.
ำงำเลยงำค่ะ
Later on, you know, they
เอา
are
อม
going
เสีย
to...
ตังตังอะไรค่ะ
The Mizo being such a tonal language, I'm not an expert on the language, but I'm a Mizo. Thi sakpo ngam. Ngam, it has to go up. So I said ngam, but it has to be thi sakpo ngam. So there will be a difference there. But we'll touch on those things later. I think Puvane Tlonga will take the lead over there, because there's so much to say. Okay, friends. You know, I started off saying thank you to the organizing committee, but students and our friends who have come from afar, we are so grateful to have you all here. So we have finished with that. I don't want to waste time anymore. And we are going to define the purpose of this panel discussion. You know, we'll try to keep within the theme that we have been given, which is the No, the sangi hansay vat tatse u. Kaya ni ang upalam tao katikhan in law mi in law pui vat tangay ne.
State of the art, contemporary Mizo writing.
Yes, state of the art. So we'll try to keep within that. For us here, the art is their writing, their creative writing, as well as writing per se, all right? It's not music, it's nothing to do with dance or other things. And we'll try to stick to that ambit. And of course, contemporary. Now, when we talk about contemporary, there's always that cusp, you know, like moving on into the more modern practices and trends, because we cannot continue with the old ways, even in writing. Why? Because then who would buy and read in the first place? It could get a bit boring, maybe. Not only that, we have some really good writers who have set the trend earlier, much earlier, in the 1930s also. Reference was made to Reverend Yang Kaya. His son, Biakliana, came up with the first Mizo novel. And then we have Kapleya, who wrote a short novel. It's a beautiful novelette. We have it in English. So actually, the titles I'll be mentioning are things that y'all can actually read in English. You know, it's pointless talking about, reciting the titles of their works when we don't have them to read. But the ones that are available, I want to mention them, and one of them is exactly that. And, excuse me, Ching Pui, which is also who is a historical figure. So a suicide takes place at the end. The hero, the Pasaltra. Can you imagine the Pasaltra committing a, suicide at the end? It was unacceptable to the Mizo psyche in many ways. So, from that time only also, already creative writing was creating a kind of upheaval, small upheavals, but it went on and on. And then, even since I'm on that, we have Puvan Neitluanga's short story, Thunderbird, which is a gem. And in fact, it's not because he's here, it's there available in Katha, Heart of the Matter, which Northeast Writers Forum had come up with. It's actually the effort of Northeast Writers Forum that a few translated works came up from the Northeast, and we are studying them also here in Mizoram. And in Thunderbird, our good friends like Professor Laltluang Lena Kyangte, who's sitting right in front of us, they changed the title a bit, but it's a beautiful masterpiece. You all must read it. It's in English and it's in Mizo. It must be read. Not because it's my translation, but it's a beautiful book, work. Now, in that sense, what I want to say is they have come across, they are still here around when we are going to talk about the contemporary. So we are going to talk about the trends, the contemporary ideas. So they will throw up ideas here and also their perspectives and viewpoints, which I hope, from which we will be able to understand and, create an experience for us, for the audience. Now, for example, we'll just start with something that Puvan Neitluanga said, I think, is because it was mentioned in one of the talks by the inaugural, in the inaugural lecture, I think, yeah, Zoram Din Tarakan, Dr. Zoram Din Tarakan, about lay, L-E-I, lay, how tonal really is the Mizo language. Sometimes we say we still need to enrich our language, which will continue through the years, but just let's start with that. There are so many things to talk about, so I might cut you all short also, don't mind. Yeah.
uh, you know, the word L-A-E, lei. Instead of that, why don't you change with B-R-N, bun, 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 ban. All of them means different, all of them has its own different meaning. Like bun, if it is bun, that is sticky. Or bun is, if we climb in a rock, ka bun zay zay mai, that again is bun. And then we have pillar, that is bun. And then we have this arm, ban. And then we have, if we stop our relationship with our friends or whatever, it is kaban se, ban. And then we still have some more, I think. So that is the problem we have here, especially with the Tibeto-Burman tonal language. We have B-R-N, you may say B-A-N, but we have B-R-N. But just that B-R-N also means so many things. The problem we have here with Mizo is we do not have that tone marks to differentiate between those words. Together with Putluang Tea, we tried very hard many times, but still that is not included in the vowels, the tone marks. All right, let me try. Let me,
Okay.
please.
Briefly.
Spine. The spine is zang, Z-A-N-G, zang. But if we pronounce it a little down, it means male organ. And if we hit a nail with hammer, that is chu. But be very, very careful. If we pronounce it a little down, it means a female organ. So that kind of limitations we have here. So what I always feel is to have those kind of tone marks. Thank you.
Thank you, Pupa. Okay. Now, we are exploring ideas new and old, and also keeping in mind that we have friends here who maybe are hearing such things for the first time. And you know, there is so much humor, not only in Mizo writing, but in the way we talk and interact with each other. But there are some people who have attained a kind of, you know, they have mastered this kind of thing as an art, you know. And for this, I would like to say, like Dara in his writings, there is so much humor. And of course, Puvan Neitluanga. Taite, as you can see, he's the serious type, even from his face. So, but he still laughs a lot. Sipu Tluanga, he may be seen as irreverent sometimes. And long ago, they made so much news in the papers, and I think that was what they wanted. Because...
Mom, please.
Oh.
Let them have some space.
Yeah, I'm going to ask him first. Yeah. Pudaraka, I want you to talk on the humor, please. Yeah. Oh, nu is that...
China Putluanga Soika, Twini Velok Kadua, Ban, the Velka, Omze Shang Tam Taka Oma, Amaro to Atku, Awat, a spelling pot, Dang Lambia, Loma say Omze Dang Day, Naisika, Can they took Bogani, Chumizing, Atuntina Pakatan, so look on the China Pijoy, Sajing, Venka, locality Tinania, Tin Veng, Miss Walkan Veng, Bonkan Veng, Kane and let see Bocani. Chuchu, Mizo Tong he, a house saklo, not Vange, Nianga, a house saklo to Vangzok, the like to command him, Cielo, Casatium, Cielo, to like that you can build Vezokonich.
Yeah, Kaka, Taite Poyan in Ecomed to Karing, Clat Kami like a hand site. So, 1 point to the Hakan Caldonia.
Mizo Trong Hinia Makong. Tai Chi Lam Pangan Siding, so Ting Te call Bahra he am cho hian atak anti chuan atam anti na hilo ni de ya balang cho te hian in amin lo an tia balang cho min thadeu po kha min thadeu chum le te kha alo ngai zu ya khati an chi kha alo tam mai
Yeah. So we'll leave the tonal part of our language. Yeah. Now, again, Putluanga may like to take the lead regarding ownership of a work. Of course, we have heard of this, there are theories about this, but we are talking about in the context of Mizo writing. So, as you know, chief writers, in fact, I would say, prominent writers, what do they feel? How have they been experiencing this through the years? That is, ownership kanti to, okay, let's say way back in 1969, Roland Barthes wrote his seminal essay, Death of the Author, but some people may insist that it continues to be my work, you should not play around with it too much. But some authors would say that the moment I put it, I publish it and it is out in the public domain, it's free for interpretation. In the context of them writing in Mizo, in the context of Mizo writing, I just want to know, what do they feel about this? Do they have any stance about this? Have they thought about it? Or Putluang?
It's very difficult to say because that may differ from one author to another.
Yeah.
Some may want to say the precise definition of what they are writing about. But at the same time, like Pulal Koliana, he wrote about Sensieri, that song, that poem. But he doesn't want to reveal who exactly is that Sensieri. Like that, we may, every one of us may have our own way of doing it, like that death of the author that you had discussed. In my case also, I had composed one song, and they are, the one who sang those songs are possessed by the so-called Holy Spirit, and they asked me to go there. But I am not at all having those kind of feelings. So let them have that. I prefer not to involve myself there.
Okay.
Because that song is living there in their own world, not in mine. So that is how I feel.
But sometimes you may have, especially since your works are out there for research and also for study, you do have visitors, a number of visitors, students, research scholars, who might insist otherwise, who might want, your interpretation, or who is this to tell you, because often you kind of hide, it looks like in your writings that you are hiding something, but you want to talk about it, but you will not reveal it, that kind of a thing. You do feel it could be a bit of an annoyance for writers, you know? What is your
when they
sense?
come, I usually say this is the meaning of this and that. But the problem with me is another researcher may come and I may say some other things. That is the problem with me. And at the same time, the other thing is, if they may interpret in other way. Ang tingay kasoyang lung stick pakata oma sa vabutse na kan kam ngi angaya ni full stop kam ngi angaya ni. And then that very sentence, one man approached me and said, "Oh, that word kam ngi angaya ni. It's happening to me. It's very realistic. My life itself is kam ngi angaya ni." I don't mean to say those things. But since he feel it like that, I'm not supposed to say that, no, I don't mean to do that. let him feel us.
So
the
you
one-
give
the way he
freedom
wants.
to them in a certain
Yes,
way.
yes.
Yeah.
So that is
Come,
how I.
when a bird is building a nest, akama, but that was your interpretation, but the person feels that his life needs support. Come, it would be support, giving support. Yeah, please feel free to keep referring to your works, and so that, it could, people could get some more value out of what you are saying, like darapo. Enge ingay dan hemya yan itil zia te himin itumlo ang tewin titase emo interpret tase ilom lau trienem. Are you unhappy when people interpret your works in a totally different way, which you did not mean to when you were writing it?
Chút tiếng chút cả lát tóc lém làว่าcả lâu là ngày tuổi ngày xía đâu cái tiếng mình lâu khỏi đang làm sạc càng gì cả chúng mà.
Oh, but have you ever given a thought to this? Ingay to trienem.
Ngày tuổi về trên thôi plagiarism làm dọc khi cái ngày mỏ dọc mà.
Okay.
Mi in kan thu zia te kan essay zia kan article zia te khoi lai amo tu lai page on YouTube pa te an ma ni minga lo chiar ve mai tok ten oma
Yeah.
kha tiang chi kha ngai mo om ka ti a khoi dang lam sim sim a hi chuan kan la tok chi lo ka ngai tan kan nei thiam chi lo ka lo ngai tu ngai lo ni.
Yeah, I think that's very important. What Dara is saying, I agree. He says that he hasn't given thought to that angle, but what he's talking about is plagiarism, because plagiarism is important, especially in the line of research, where people quote, and now especially with the social media, you quote from somebody's work, but you don't say that you are quoting, you speak as though it's your own words. Yeah, that means you have encountered this. Anti-chinti, animo, ishita animo, nang ma waksa.
Pakhat chu ka tong ve to ama ro chu tiang in an be le chiam chu ka nei chung na han sil khan ni ma ya ama ro chu tiang social media la nu so YouTube bar vel ten ang lo nu an tam nu hian a neu ni chuan ka hria mi sei ka thele thi
Yeah. Ni pasal tra chung sang pok an soi khamo tai te ten pasal tra le hero ngai san na tang man kum to kha lo ne tu na, it's really catching up, and anti lutuk devem te hi kan han ti ta sok khan ya han soi te tai te. I think tai te also has some views on this. People may be misinterpreting. You can interpret. The freedom is there in a way to interpret, especially creative writings. Otherwise, it cannot grow, it cannot be interesting for others. But when it is interpreted in such a way that is distasteful to you or really not your cup of tea, it works tahimi in nilaw baksak da uleka uninterpret day anhan soi chon day then hey yati na niang hey chu tiang khan kha khai iphalem
putluang soyang hin khania kan ta ni to lawa an du dan khanin an lo khil fia kha chuanin soi thei hi kan van nei to lo zok hen ga ria ke chuan
yeah all right
ai kan zia ka mi pui chir thei turin kan the chuak to a khamia khanin ami pui a chir tu te lam kha chuan an du nan lo suang to nga an du in an lo khil fia in an lo thek pui kwal thei turin zalen na kha an nei tura kangai khamia kha chuan in vasoi vak kha atul toin ka helo an mani khanin kan in saksa mang khanin indang an lo save nimaya kangai.
Okay, yes, that's a good way of putting it. You build a house and somebody is copying it or making another house like that. using their own creative talents also. Putaite is pretty okay with this kind of. Oh.
กันสวยเลงอ่ะ
Oh, say
กันทนทุนเนี่ยดาราเสียงคานินอีอารุกโจงอ่ะอันโดนกันละกันทนทุรูละทนทุดังอันเราพวนเรารูกแต่เราเขาจุทิลหัวถล่มตักนี่
อีตรง
อัน
ไหน
นี้แหละทุ
ชูอีตรง
ตรงกับตรงนั่นสักขอบไหม
เออ
ก็เลย
ตุ
เขา
ลายาเพย์ชวนติโร
อ๋อ
เอ็มเพย์ยูทูบ
มิจะว่าเห็นตรงนั่นสักเบอร์กันนี่กันริงเฮียล
อ๋อ
กับทุรุกีข้าเลยว่าพออี history กันหน่อยเลยก็ essay เลย article เสียงานอย่างตบปะลาเต้ก็ drama งานอย่างตบปะโลล่าก็ดูดาร์สันเราจันตักไม่จะไปกับเรนดูอันไหม
อ๋อ
ก็ article เสียงแต่พอเราติดดังละมาอีโลล่าฮีอันอมชีน้ำมอที่ประคัดกันสวยลกงา
สวยหรอที่ดังอ่ะพันนี่ดู
ที่ดังเดียวกลุ่มสร้างนิเวลคานินผู้เจมส์ดูคู่มาตรงใจด่านตัวที่ฟิล์มถูเฮียนินกันซิระกันสวยตรงอุปาเดข้าอาวาระข้าตาคานินเกยข้านินผู้ดูคู่มาตรงใจด่านตีคานินผัวจบคานตรงอุปมังคานผู้ดูคู่มาตรงใจด่านก็เจียก็ฟิล์มถูบัวคานก็ชัวไม่ตับเปกาข้ามีนู่คานินเริ่มเสียมเมนคอมเมเดียนทิตาคานผู้ดูคู่มันเขาหารินานี่เราอินในทาร์เตยังไงตรงอาฟุยนาทัวสวยก็ฟิล์มถูกขันถูกตักปนนี่เราขันสวยจัวจีน่ะภาษามันว่าใช้จู่ก็ฟิล์มถูกบัวชัวก็ดูเขากัดเดียก็เรียกชงก็ชัวเลยแต่ไม่บอกกันเองข้าFacebook ก็เตเองเราว่าแต่ข้านินอันเราละชงละเสียเมียมตามอจวานินข้างกัดพูดเอาคู่มาตรงใจด่านก็เสียเตเริ่มเสียมเลียมาทุสอยเริ่มเสียมเลียมาทุสอยก็เสียชอนังจีแต่ข้าไม่เชื่อราแต่ข้ามีดังมิ่งข้านารนช่วงแต่ได้ไม่นี่ข้างข้าทิลเทงตุน่ะ radio in อันรนติชัวทิน all India radio ARI จอลีนอันรนติชัวทินข้านินผู้เจ็บตัวคู่มาจันจินข้าอันรนสวยตามันจันจุกง่ายถ้าอะไรเหล่ตัวเดียวเล็กก็แต่ขณะปุ๊ดดูคู่มาฮิตจงใจด่านโปะเทียมแต่กันเนี้ยแห้งเฮียนเองเราแต่โปะฮิมิโซรัมเล่นน้ำตาลเฮียนดูทั่วสามะจงขัดเนี้ยก็ผัวจบเขาปุ๊ดดูคู่มาสวยอย่างตักท่านินตัวไหนเฮียนินอันหันดาตาจุดตาอินในทาราฟุยน่าแต่เห็นตรงก็มาเถียมเนี่ยที่เริ่มเสียมเดียนะตรงก็กระเสียชนแต่ค่ะผู้ดาวคู่มาตีตักเฮียนินอันรอนสวยเหตุอย่างเฮียนันรอนดาตามีดังมิงแต่เฮียนินจันจินบุดังอาเตเฟซบุ๊กอาเตโปแห่งเตโปเฮชวกนนตัวเฮดไลท์จูนักอินเจล่าโปฮิสตอรีอาเตอโลลักกำลังทิลดิกเราตักจูแห่งต่อริมอันนี้เหตุผลยัน
แต่yeah he's in fact I would say he's been a victim of plagiarism. Amongst the three, he says he's the one who has to put up with a lot. And in fact, some of his works have been taken in toto, published under some other name, or even his drama came out in AIR radio, All India Radio, but in somebody else's name. So these kind of things are part of the, part of the hazards, but the important thing is it has not stopped them from, creating more works. Hey, adal song lau chewa thil kha ti to lawe mo enge mo kha in she pha song lawa kha thil thatakani ti lai kha. It's good that you all continue to write because these things will happen, but it should not happen when people get educated and are doing research. I'm surprised to hear about what he was saying just now. Another thing I think we can throw up here is we know that, say, writers from Arunachal, Mamang is here. We have writers from Assam and elsewhere also. And yes, all of us have such a rich tapestry of culture, tapestry of language and so on, that we merge it together and it produces some rich writings, fiction or not fiction, whatever it may be. And over here, we realize the importance of script writing. Over here, I think they might, do they know the importance of their choice of writing, the way they write? We cannot move in this world without some script being given, as it were. And I think over here, one or two of you all might have something to say. Thil zia tel lava, script tel lava, thil ti ahar sat zia. Mo, script ti angayani, foundation tur ang hian ti laya ka. Nge oral ka na talk may ti te. Santur, as writers, you are important for that. But if you feel that the oral is enough, or you feel that the script is so important, kami like inside them put long. Ai trong tao mà ông lâu khatikan life. Question. Yeah, question answer. Yeah. In Hemi chance then I'm going to open the question answer session, and be precise with your question, short and brief. But hey, he has chance of look same.
Hello? Of course, the script is important. That is, without script, we cannot do it. So, personally, how I do it is, I used to make a different script for radios. That is to be read out orally. But I use that same subject, when I have to write as it is, I used to change a little, some words. As I said earlier, the problem again is with the Tibeto-Burman Mizo-tonal language. Some words like amengkuau mai, try to translate in English, or amengkiau mai, amengkiau kuau mai. It's very easy to say orally, but if we have to write it, it's totally different. That is why, in the case of Mizo language, I always try to make different pieces. The one they have to read, and the one that I have to read myself.
Okay, that's interesting. So before I open the Q&A, I also want to add to that. Inside do em midang kan engem main la bel du lau chan engem matoi te la sai du last word ang deu. Yeah. Okay. Enthusiastic until produce he in law mem in satisfy them. You know, are you satisfied when you close a book that you have just written? Are you happy or not fully satisfied? You know, that kind of thing, I couldn't answer it, but the creative writer could answer that. Han soite.
Oh, writer. Chuan kan shrek anga mani kutsuak aya ngai nom hi a lawa. A hlu em tin writing hi keima big chuan bidang pon I tho mai thea thilin zia vak zan khuat lai vara thil zia te chu ha thlak o man ti mai thea amaro chu keima tan chun enjoyment ania anin thei lawa kutakal tak tak lai phei chuan a kan ro hluper a pui fanau te kain ma ni mi hring pui ti lawa chuan le khabuziak tu le khabuchu tu ta na ro hluper chu kan le khabu hining ka hri
Tai te nang sang sanin law published out te chwa ta si du khop lo te teng kha omen tai te kha
magazine ate I souvenir sang I hua angate thuzia ka sob nei kan fowa khang khan an souvenir an magazine ang te ne magazine danga englo I chanchin budang ak kan thuzia kom na te min ron pe khianin กระทุเจียกค่ะก็เชียร์มาสักเบอร์อันนี้เลย
Okay, yes. There is great satisfaction because I've read about writers who have regretted or, who have been unhappy about certain things that they have published and would like to redo it, but it's already out there in the public domain. So these are the things, I'm happy that we have been able to have this session, though really 1 hour is too short a time and uphill climb with the bilingual stuff. But I'm happy. Now when I invite for questions, it can be in Mizo or English, anything, because the writers understand both languages very, very well. So please.
中啊查那个度啊，专杀中专长路啦，วันในกลางอ่ะที่อีดูตะโซก็มีเต้นตั้มตะกาคาน reference เตอันมังโตเสีย reference คานอบไว้ระวังที่ริงเอ็มนี่อีดูตากโซกเสียที่มิโซซงเรียตาหันสวยเต
เองสอบตรงกับฉันจูอีหัววิวเหลมเหล่ก็ติดเดฟมาเซมิโซตรงชนกับช้างตัววังเจงอ่ะนี่ก็มิงค่ะอัตโลนินอารมณ์วิกินก็เสียกทรีนะมาเซโซเชียลมีเดียเฮียนก็ฟาที่เขาค่ะaccount กันเสียมเทียมซีโรมินเสียมสักรูกเตียอันเหล่าเสียมันนี่อันดูดานข้านอันเตียอาการะข้านโอลันเหล่าด่าตาก็ทากเลยเทียมตัวซีโรกันนิตานี่
Okay. Thank you. I think Sanjoy has.
Hi. Interesting session. I just wanted to understand from you whether, as writers, you find a gap between what you are writing, the kind of issues you're writing about, and what younger writers, I think we'll get an idea from the afternoon, are writing in Mizo. Young Mizo writers and older Mizo writers, is there a gap in issues?
Could you just repeat the question? Yeah, just repeat across.
Do you see a gap between the issues you write about as older Mizo writers and what younger Mizo writers are writing about, what the issues they're engaging with?
Very much there, sir.
So tell us a bit more about that.
The problem is again the language. In Mizo language, we used to have some phrases. Those were only used during our agrarian periods. In the June, while we are cleaning the grass and all that. So those words are becoming almost obsolete now. Even if we use it, they no longer understand it. So in my case, in my personal case, I don't know the others, whenever I write, I always care about the readers. What will be their age, average. So I'm thinking, sometimes I used to change some words. I need to replace them if they are going to be the younger generations. That's it.
And midangkan han azonaka tunlay contemporary ala siak thau kan ni si kay ni how he ma say hey new crop of writers, poets, creative writers are coming up. Kami akanin na niya hanin compare the na tema engi mo influence ang chite ka han sai te win ngai dan ka. Sai tu ra in nei lawem khatila ma khan ban lo par ro chan mai kan ron peng cheu.
ทุกันเสียเฮียนินอนุปังเอาป่าที่หันินตาลันวักที่เฟลเชียเราเฮียนกระเรียฮิลปะขนาดจวนกุมจัดสวยที่ฮิกันจริงกุมจัดสวยที่ก็ดูเราครบไหมอนุปังเตปนรอนเจียกเสียอนุปังนักขรอนเจียกลันแค่เรียจูลก็ติเรากุ upatak pon non ziak se upat na kharon zia lan kher kha achul ka tilawa athu ziak kha a thang e thalo ti kan en tur hin ka nga ya I khovela ziak tu ro pui leng lo te kan en re re hianin kum no pang te kum som ni pot ling lo an zia te hin ya hi mi zo hian kum hi ano pang lam ziak deuh ani te hianin kan vor eng lo emo I faknan hian a kum te hi kan mang de mo ti na ril ru hi kan ya hemia hianin a kum lam pang hi chu in ti lan a kum lam pang a hian ke en ngai lo ni ki chuan a ziak tu a upai ano pang em ti kha ke en lo inga nge ron zia tiang chi te hi ken thin
Sanjoy, I think you were also asking about, you were asking about the young writers and if they are influenced. No, but something to do with the age, right? Yeah, the issues are different, definitely different. We'll be hearing them. But other than that, I think their view is more or less. Taite says that he doesn't look for the fact that the writer is young or old. He looks at the substance of it. So let's see what is going to happen, because I don't know how much all of us read each other's works. Let's be very honest here. How much of each other's works do we read? So, and the younger crop of writers, from what I see, because I do get complimentary copies from quite a number of them, what I see is people are they're striving, young crop of writers are striving to be different in language use and in what they're doing, as it were. But Mizos, we are such a traditional society also at the end of the day. Some of them, it seems, are not too tied down by this. So we are beginning to see breakdown of barriers, as it were, some barriers, inhibitions, shall we say, which the older crop have long done and also moved on. You won't believe it, there is so much irreverence in some of their writings that, it's so humorous, but at the same time, it makes you think. But the thing is, I don't know how much people read of it, otherwise they would be receiving a lot of big brickbats on some of them. So, in that sense. So, in the afternoon, we'll be hearing from our young crowd. And, say Role.
Siding Lena, IFA University of Mizoram Culture Studies, Sri Lanka. I'm a sign, Kazona Turhi, Ngaidan and Idona Vang Kandron Pu, Patum Tehian, and Ngaidan Chow, means so Sakturin Kangan, Masani say, Tuna can topic Nena in Ladel, my Tega Zona Turhi, Atilam Khan, Sarzoram din Tarakana Ronsoya, Tule Lahi, Zihnina Chentea, Bakatsu, Tule La, me fit napete, she and napete, Tiam napete, G and ya. Adang le chu thu le la mi ti phur thei mi chak na pe thei le mi ti tura phui thei chi ania ti ania apoi mo ve ve a thu le la hian amai ro chu kam tun lai mi zo chang thar zo he mi thu le la lama ron tui chau tur te tan hian kan tun din huna hian a khoi zo khinge kan mamwa in shia ti kha min chan sak thei chon kalom view
a top lai te kha sai non le lok te is on Naka, Chiang the Win and Sherna. In Shama, okay, good.
Right on Suk Tarzet, and Finna Petaichi, Purna Petaichi, Kapoi Mozok, and the Parangatero.
Yeah.
A poi Mozok, so Tiam Harang, and come my Amaro to night one can write, can trunk tartam, takizu, and poor mamma, Katia. Pasartaton took an attack than Emma Trangtahian in Ashiat Maya. And poor ma in Gasia break rat, they eyes in Gasia to light, Takijuan. nghe này anh thiếu gì tụt chiang mi loin history po sẽ lu tục loin mizo nam kal phung le khát tiếng po eng mà vậy in zir chuang si loin giải chút pasar thatan thun siak le lo kong eo ti free ngot khát tiếng ringot khát chu thu le la hau sak na po a chiar tlak lo ni tun lai kan ziak tu tam tak thil gì hi literature po khang ho kha an survive chuang lawang gì tak tak lo ni he ta ri lu phim tak nen ngai tu na phim tak nen na thil thui jok ngai tu ti meang kan thiam ang to ka injir chunga thu le la hi ti hau sak kan tu mani lo chuan poisa tu na ziak tu tam jok hian bizo history te an tui puya thon thun tha nei du wang ani mi lo youtube pa da ve poisa lo mu ve kha chu che chun ril ruwa omani chu chuan literature ti hau sa lo reng reng chu wangin ril
dai rei bok lawa
kan chu album halang de kan
ni na comment ve du me.
You know, I never try to enrich the society or like that. I am simply writing whatever comes in my mind.
Right.
That is who I am and what I am doing. So, some kind of a moral lesson or whatever, those things, I never personally touch those things. I simply write whatever comes in my mind. That's who I am. But mi zong zong khat chu tiang ni se ka ti mi alo ke ma lam kain soi na ni
And then I'll sum it up and we can conclude. Is soi du lom ni. Okay, zona dangkala omem. Yeah. Soi
Sorry to interrupt you there, Mona. I think we'll just take your last question. That's it. I think we'll have to, yeah. Just your question, and after that, ma'am can sum up, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So I just wanted to, it's a very brief question. One of the things is, I'll just say it in Mizo, in Lekabu Tharhi, Kabese, Lutuka, can you say, give us a few words about in future, Lekabu in Ron, Suhaturin, Titaka, Shat Tekadua, and besides that, Puvan Letuang Apeso, Kum Som, I Tamkalta, had young meet well organized Kantum Trina, and we used to ask him, and he always said, I'm not a writer. He thrown this Trina and Puba Letwa writer. We were so confused. I remember that, and you used to argue with us. No,
never see myself as a writer. That's why. Chuchuni mai. I don't let one engeni kale kabu. Collection of my editorials. That's what.
Okay.
Oh, Miss Mona. So lai chu kan ei ve a ma se kumina him pakhat chu kan tuma ka man do nem ka hrelowa kan da manga pathian sara kan da ti ve se rang chu
Tai te soi ra. Soi na chan
lockdown lai khanin kan zia ka pui tlin lei thelo ni.
Okay. Joy has...
Okay, 2 quick questions. What do you think the education system in Mizoram, where we have all English medium schools and a lack of Mizo learning per se, and at the same time a very common use of Mizo language in day-to-day living, how has that affected the reading of Mizo? Do you think that has affected the reading of Mizo by a large population, or do you think it has affected our knowledge of Mizo? Kaka, the first question. And the second question is, hey, I have not read much Mizo literature, I must confess. Mase, from what I read of it and what little that I know of it, it explains a lot of the older literature, explains Mizo psyche, Mizo culture, Mizo ways of living, Mizo ways of thinking, right? So when you translate that into English, it perhaps is not able to capture that ethos, right?
Exactly.
But then at the same time, we have works like Chinua Achebe's what's it called? Things Fall Apart. You know, which has been able to capture that, you know, Nigerian society and whatever. So I'm just wondering, like, will there be a time when the localness of a Mizo idea will be able to be captured in English in such a way that, you know, it gets wider sort of acclaim? You know, because if you read Things Fall Apart, it's so localized, the way they think about their own society and things like that. But the English is not a deficiency there, you know, because you're able to capture the world of that person in that. So I was just thinking, Mizo Trung a kanthil zia hi sap trung in kami level a kan and thing can convey the ang ti ka kangai to na o may thing kan sanang ka shelo.
That is our job, Pimagiti, to run here, translating from Mizo to English. That is not our job. And the first question is, my quick reaction is like this. We learned A, B, C. A for apple. And it goes on and on. We have May and May. Katikantesu may an may tiro kantile siya. At the end of the day, as you said earlier, mase atira, we were so careless. Kanjir tirawa. We no longer have that in alphabet. All they speak in their tongue is A for apple. The problem is May and May. Chuchuni may. May an may.
Pronunciation. Himo tay say do engemo. Okay. Yeah. Inin klasung daw nin kasya. Yeah. Just to briefly sum up regarding the last question from Joy, I'll just start. Regarding that translation, I think one of the ways in which to bring out that Mizo-ness into a more wider perspective, and where the color and the tone is not lost, you know, the cultural, the genuine tinge of what is being written. Often translators, things get lost in translation, as one theorist put it. The day will come, and I think this is something which they must attempt. Our writers should start thinking of writing in a language other than Mizo also. You have some writers writing in their vernacular, and then they write the same thing in English also. Katiang kan omani tilai ka kasoi doa indu ang sia te han til hi translate lau kan nei thai chiang lu tu kamo ka bang khan ania arei to ka engemo kai po han soi bel du nei mai la ka soi lo nga question he tilai kan na wina ron zo khan hi the question that he had asked the student from ICFI, he was asking because the first lecture we had listened to from Dr. Zoram Dintara, he said literature has two functions or two types of literature. One is to teach, and it also has a purpose, but the other one is to stimulate. I'm just being very brief. So he's asking, where do you stand? Now, they are very clear about certain things when they write, especially for the younger writers. Today, things are really changing, and where the purpose and value of literature itself is being diluted, not only with the wrong use of language that we listened to just now, because the pronunciation and spellings are, you know, taking effect even on some of our young writers, unfortunately, but also because, as we were saying, and Darokima was saying also, the influence is there of good writing, but it is not emulated to an extent that it should be. Writing is a serious business in many ways. It can be very comic, it can be humorous, but it has to be something that has value in language and in approach and in everything else. So the example he gave was what I had mentioned at first about Pasalcha warriors. Nowadays, the stories are being generated because you get paid for it. And both language and also theme and characterization is taking a toss, and that is true. So, writers, upcoming writers must be careful about this. This is basically answer to also what maybe Sanjoy could also get a perspective on that. So, an atramayem kan du tokem ite hunto. Thank you so much for your attention, you know. Yeah, thank you.
I would like, on behalf of the organizing committee, I thank all the panelists, and I would like Mami to do the honors of presenting the mementos to our panelists on the stage. Kanziak tute le khabuan kutsuak ipona kan pawa chu adu tetana leithe in sain tir hal bokonga mizo chongi ka thiam baklawa ka pian pui chonga nilova kan ei zon na chonga ni maya ma che chu tu chung chuan Harivansh Rai Bachana poem Madhushala ti mizo chongin claim ka daven na kinakalaron share ang kan writers how te ka an ngai dan ka shebe du shime mizo chuan zu kan buai pui boka zu in mi alawin 137 stanza poem aziak ka ro pui tak katia